Welcome back to Art Trippin lecture series. Now we are going to discuss what art can do, or the power of art, the power of images. Art has been used for literally millennia, literally thousands of years. Art has been used in different ways for different purposes. Sometimes art is used to express ideas about power. Sometimes art is used to express ideas about the human condition, about existence. Sometimes art is used to express an emotion. And sometimes art is used politically, like in the case of propaganda. In this series, we want to make sure we understand the arc of art history and how art has been used throughout the world, not just so we can understand the past better, but also so we can understand how images are used today to affect the way that we think. So we can learn to think critically about the images that we see in our world today. I'm Dr. Megan Lorraine Debin, and I'm an art historian, and this is Art Trippin Lecture Series. Hi, I'm Dr. Megan Lorraine Debin, and this is Art Trippin. So what can art do? What is the power of art? And how has art been used throughout history to express ideas? So when we look at really ancient art or prehistoric art, and this is art from the time period before written history, let's look at, for example, the Woman of Willendorf. Some scholars speculate that this object might have been used to aid in fertility or perhaps fertility rituals. So sometimes art can be about sort of really basic things related to human experience, like, procreation, sex, sexuality, food, really basic things, like perhaps the cave paintings have something to do with hunting and food. So art might express ideas about basic human needs. Or art, sometimes in art history, has been used to express ideas of power. So here we see the ancient Egyptian pharaoh Hatshepsut, who was one of the few female pharaohs. And through art, she was expressing her ideas about being in power. And one thing that's really interesting about her, side note, is that even though she was a woman, she would wear like a strap-on, a strap-on pharaonic beard. So she really looked like the rest of the sort of male pharaohs that came before her. You might also think of the ancient Romans. Here we're looking at the Pantheon, and you know that the ancient Romans connected their empire through architecture. So in many ways, they used architecture to express ideas about power and empire. We also see art used in service of the church or religion. And this is something that we see as monotheism spreads throughout sort of the Western world, Europe, and parts of North Africa, especially Christianity and Islam. And we will see that art is used to express both ideas about political power, but also spiritual power, spiritual ideas, and the power of religion. By the time we get to the 1800s, we see a really dramatic shift kind of in the purpose of art. So we've already talked about this idea that, like, in general, art is something that's aesthetically pleasing or that we enjoy looking at. We also mentioned that it might express ideas about sexuality, power, religion, and spirituality. By the 1800s, we start to see the spread of Enlightenment thinking around Europe, and we have this new field of study that's called aesthetics. If you want to know more about that, check out Kant, and we will talk about that here in the series, but check out Kant and this idea of aesthetics, which is basically the philosophy of art. What does art do? What's its purpose? Who does it serve? How and why? And basically, Kant and others were calling for an art that was not tied to power, that was not tied to the patron. So let's go back and think about, say, a Renaissance portrait by Lavinia Fontana. This is an example of like a kind of traditional Renaissance patron relationship. Let's say I'm a wealthy Bolognese woman, and I know Lavinia Fontana does the best portraits of ladies. Maybe I want to get it as a gift to my husband, or maybe my husband will get it as a gift for me when we get married, or maybe I need to make sure I uphold my reputation because women in Italy in the Renaissance were expected to be very loyal. And so we see these little doggies in these portraits with them that indicate perhaps their loyalty to their husbands. So if I am a wealthy patron, I can go to Lavinia Fontana's studio, or she can come to me and paint my portrait. So I, as the patron, have some control over the content of what is being created, and the artist sort of has control over the style of what is created. As we move into the 1800s, we start to see artists creating artworks almost on like a speculative basis. Like the artist would create the artwork and they were free from the patron. They did not have to paint what the patron wanted them to paint. They could paint whatever they want. So there's a great deal of freedom in this. The artist has pure freedom, but it's also a very precarious place for the artist because they have to make the art and then hope that someone buys it. And in fact, this is very much how the art world functions today. Of course, there are still commissions and patrons, people who are requesting very specific artworks, especially something like a portrait. But in general, in the modern sense, artists are making work and hoping that someone is going to want to buy it eventually. This is something that you can see on like social media, sites like TikTok, Instagram. A lot of artists have really made a name for themselves just putting their art out there and building a following. So in some ways, these social media apps have been, it's complicated, but in some ways, these social media apps have provided an audience for artists who might otherwise not have access to an audience. So although there is a great deal of freedom for the modern artist and for artists today, a lot of freedom of expression and the ability to express ideas, emotions, thoughts, philosophical beliefs through their art, there's also this very precarious nature where there's not a sense of stability. So with that freedom comes also instability. It's kind of like the life of a freelancer today. If you make no sales, how are you going to pay your rent? How are you going to pay your mortgage? We want to keep in mind these different systems as we are studying art and art history. Thank you for joining me. I'm Dr. Megan Lorraine Debin, and this has been Art Trippin Lecture Series. If you like this video, like, subscribe, comment below if you have any questions, and let me know what else you want to see.